Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burns. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. We talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple or Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but most importantly, hit that subscribe button, because if you do, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. Speaking of Mondays, it is one right now at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and that means we're live on YouTube. So go over to the A to Z Sports Nashville YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified when we go live, and you can come hang out with us. Drop in, comment, be a literal part of the show. It's always a great time. Love going back and forth with everybody. It's always great. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for all the stuff that Zach writes on the internet. All right. It's been an interesting week. Not because of recruiting or, fall camp's about to start. It won't stop raining here, Zach. Has it been that way in North Carolina? It has been horrendous. I guess I say that. It's literally sunny in the window behind me, but it was raining all day today until like an hour ago. And it needs to apparently it's going to like rain all night tonight, all day tomorrow. Can we stop? I feel like Noah's Ark over here. What's up, man?
Yeah, no, it's definitely had fair share of rain. After all this time of complaining about no rain, it all came at once in the end of July here, it seems.
It was saving it all up. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, though, yeah, it's been a fun week to be a Tennessee fan. Oof. For sure. Or really a fun month to be a Tennessee fan. And doesn't look like the fun's going to stop anytime soon. Talking about recruiting, of course, and I know we'll get into that. But yeah, it's vibes are still high. Riding that College World Series win right into football season, and it just couldn't be better on Rocky Top right now.
It has been really good. Obviously, national championship a month ago in baseball. Finally, recruiting for Tennessee is cooking. That's going to be the biggest topic on today's show for us. Fall camp, and when I say right around the corner, I mean what? 2 days. 2 days from now, fall camp begins for Tennessee football, and then you have. That's pretty much it. Women's basketball got a couple of big recruits not too long ago. That was good. Those twins. So tons of really good things happening for Tennessee. New expanded scholarship. We weren't really going to talk about this on the show. The expanded scholarship amounts that are now allotted for different sports. That's great for everybody, maybe nationwide, but also for Tennessee. So, hey, it's all good. But we're obviously, if you clicked on this from the title of the show, we're going to be talking about recruiting for Tennessee, which has just been ridiculous. I don't want to say out of nowhere, but I would say that we've had conversations in the last year where we sort of said, should we be concerned about this? Because, not a lot of guys jumping in the boat right now. The guys that are jumping in the boat's kind of 3 stars and sometimes it's 4-star, whatever. It's been a nice little run that Tennessee has gone on, and we're going to discuss it all right after I tell you about the great folks at Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans have been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200-plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Big thanks to them. Go get yourself a health plan, Farm Bureau. All right, Zach. It was a massive, massive recruiting weekend this past weekend, and it was pretty cool. I got took a boat out on the Tennessee River this weekend with some family, and got to float past the stadium, which was great. The lights were on. It was like maybe 1 p.m. The lights were on. And a lot of activity going on around there. I'm sure that it was hyping the crew, entertaining all these kids. Big recruiting weekend with some big commits. And the biggest one of those that came in was this flip of Oregon commit Desan Brame. Well, I guess you could really argue if this was the the biggest one or not. We're going to talk about everything that happened, but we'll start with this one. At least you flipped a guy from Oregon who is, surging right now. Just in general, they got that Nike money. They're a killer program, joining the Big Ten, and you win this recruiting battle. Yeah, let's start there, Zach. What'd you think of this one?
Yeah, I mean that was obviously massive. Just because when Tennessee, we talked about this I think last week or the week before. Brame initially, all the predictions had him going to Tennessee. We were all pretty surprised when he committed to Oregon over Tennessee, and it was like, yeah, that's a tough miss. I mean, you were expected to land this guy and you didn't. Obviously, Oregon knocked his visit out of the park, and that happens a lot of times where you commit right after you go on an official visit. That's what's fresh in your mind. You're kind of still living off that emotion. From I think it was Austin Price who's on 104.5 The Zone with Ramon, Kayla, and Will this morning. He kind of told a story about not O'Dune's, Brame, that Pacific Northwest out there, I guess, got me mixed up. Yeah, pretty much immediately knew that he had made a mistake and called Tennessee and he just kind of felt like, yeah, this wasn't right. And he admitted that he should have pushed the commitment back instead of trying to make that decision so quickly. But Tennessee wasn't just like all over him, like blowing him up. Obviously, they kept in contact. They kept that relationship that they had built positive with him, and they just waited. And I think that patience paid off, and it showed that they're not just trying to say whatever they can to get him to commit. They are, Tennessee is who they are. They kind of practice this family first, no pressure, genuine atmosphere, and that showed through this whole recruitment. And I think Brame felt that, and he understood, felt like Tennessee was the place for him. He loved Knoxville. And I thought that was really interesting the way that played out. It just says a lot about the way this staff recruits. It's why we've used the word sustainable so much with this staff and the way they recruit. And you're just kind of seeing that pay off now. They just keep stacking recruits. They get a little bit better each year. It seems each month it just gets a little bit better. And eventually, you've built a recruiting monster, and that's what they're working towards. And who knows if they get there, but everything seems to point to the right direction now for Tennessee. And it was I just thought it was really cool the way that played out, and it was unique. You don't see that a lot in college football now.
Yeah, it is very odd, and especially when you're pulling from such a powerful program like Oregon that just had a huge season. They didn't make the playoff, but they got really close. And I think it's a pretty special, a significant moment here for Heupel and his recruiting journey so far. Obviously, if you go all the way back, I mean, we had all those conversations of just, can this guy recruit? He's coming from UCF. Don't know if he's got it in him. And, he's got this fun offense. That's really cool, and that's great. But can he really do it? And we've even had conversations up to this past year, as I mentioned, where we were sort of saying, should we be concerned? And the reality of the situation always is you have to recruit near the level of those top teams that are making the playoff. And the way that those teams are recruiting right now is just elite, 5 stars on top of 5 stars on top of 5 stars. And the guys that aren't 5 stars are all 4 stars. And so you have to join the ranks there if you want to ultimately truly compete, and not just have a one-off year like 2022, but compete in perpetuity into the future. And building classes like that is the whole deal. And this is really, I don't want to say it's the very first sign. Obviously, you have Nico, and you've gotten huge recruits in the past. You've had recruits that aren't even 5 stars, like James Pierce. I think he was a 4, and he's turned into an absolute monster, predicted to be one of the best players in America this upcoming year. The recruiting's been good. But again, it takes that elite step to take you where you need to go. And I think the signs are really there with this last stretch, because Deshaun Brame over Oregon, Lagonza Hayward, if I'm thinking correctly, over Georgia, maybe also Florida.
And South Carolina, and Florida. South Carolina and Georgia both made some serious runs at him and kind of had some of those recruiting analysts waffling a bit on their predictions back in June.
Yeah. And then Christian Gass, I think, over Georgia. Travis Smith over Georgia, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that run right there, where you are beating the team that has been the absolute model of top-notch recruiting in the last 5 years. It's massive. I don't think that you can undersell that at all. It's big. It really is big, and it is so great. And also, I mean, I had one of my best friends in the world. He's a huge, just deep down the recruiting rabbit hole guy, and he said, I don't know where this was on message boards. If I'm taking anyone's info, I apologize. He just told me this today, but supposedly with Brain, the NIL deal with Tennessee was a lot smaller than with Oregon, and yet he chooses Tennessee. So it's not just, hey, let's throw money at this kid and he's going to come here for the fattest paycheck possible. There's more going on. The strategies are there for Tennessee to pick these kids up past just paying them a bunch of money. It's amazing to see. It's really great.
for sure. And the NIL aspect is certainly interesting because I think there is this misconception that it's just whoever throws the most money at these players, and that's been the case early on in NIL, and it still does happen. Obviously, you're going to have some outliers. You're going to have guys at the last minute decide to head it elsewhere because they want the big paycheck. And I think a lot of programs are understanding. I mean, those aren't the players that are typically going to take you to a championship, no matter how talented they are, because it tells you that maybe that compete factor isn't really where it needs to be. Obviously, the money's going to be a part of it because at this point, it'd be like an NFL player playing for free. You're just not going to do that. You're not going to see, Tyreek Hill out there and play 16 games for the Dolphins for a minimum salary. He knows what he's worth, and he can go get that. It's going to be kind of similar in college. I mean, these guys now know they're supposed to get paid, essentially. I mean, that's the way this works now. But at the same time, if you're just going for the biggest check, it's not always going to work out the way you think it's going to work out. And these players are smart. They know that. They understand that. They also understand that if they perform well on Saturdays, they're going to have a lot of opportunities to make money. If you're among the best players in college football, you're going to get these NIL opportunities, from beyond just where you're at. There's going to be companies from outside nationally that come to you and want you to endorse their product or appear on their, platforms, whatever the case may be. Like the NIL money is going to be there if you play at a high level. And I think that's the message from a lot of these programs. And hopefully that's kind of, it looks like it's kind of starting to resonate with a lot of these recruits.
It really is. And I love this pickup with Brain because the tight end is such an important position for Josh Heupel's offense, and it's huge. What are his exact measurements? 6'4.5", 225, huge dude, 4-star player, bona fide 4-star across the board. It's a great pickup. You also had, as we already mentioned, Laganza Shady Hayward. I love that Shady
What
Hayward.
a nickname. Yeah. I mean, like was it LaShawn McCoy had that nickname in the NFL,
Yeah.
but I feel like it really fits for a DB. Like that's a perfect nickname for a DB.
Yeah, shading everybody. You're all over the
Yeah.
place, covering everybody. It's awesome. Another bona fide 4-star 6'1", 205. And
some length. That's important.
Yeah.
Those DBs in the SEC. You got to have some guys that are 6'1", 6'2". They can all be 5'10" out there, even if they're fast.
And I think it goes without saying with the state of the defensive backfield that at Tennessee, while Josh Heupel has been here, given that, it's really important to pick up high level guys. You already got Boo Carter and more dudes like this. That's the way where you will finally kind of plug that hole that's been so obvious during Heupel's entire time at Tennessee. And hopefully this is just the start here. You gotta, it can't just be this one time. Unfortunately, we love to praise Heupel when we can. It does have to be this going forward. But on that note, Faison Brandon, number one quarterback in the 2026 class, I think on one service, he's the number one overall player.
24/7, I believe he's the number one overall. Yeah.
And he's set to make a decision soon and is being predicted to Tennessee. And he's that type of guy where you get him and he's going to, like George McIntyre right now, he's going to recruit for you. He's going to be that guy out front, I think.
How wild is it that these I mean, when Nico committed, we thought it was, it was like, okay, these guys are committing early, right? Like you're committing in March before
Yeah.
you've even played your senior year of high school football. And then George McIntyre commits in January, just after his junior year, before he's even played his senior year of football. And a side note here, we were talking about this before we started recording. It's absolutely maddening that George McIntyre lost his 5th star and has dropped in the recruiting rankings since he committed in January, and he has not played a single snap. And nobody in the country, not a single player in this country, has played a meaningful snap of football in a competitive game that, not talking about these 7-on-7 camps and all these things. The fact that he dropped that far is completely absurd and shows what a scam some of these camps are. He commits in January. Now you got Faison Brandon committing, I believe it's this upcoming Saturday in August before his junior season of high school football. I mean, that is insanely early. But to your point, that really helps him. He would be, I think, the first 2026 player that's committed to Tennessee. I don't know if they have one yet. I don't think they do. And you get to be kind of like the guy that helps put this class together. You get to head all this up. Even you have even more of a head start than McIntyre and Nico had. And plus, he's from Greensboro, so not quite as close as George McIntyre, but still just a few hours away from Knoxville. So he should be able to come into Knoxville pretty often for recruiting visits when they have big time recruits in. That was a big thing for McIntyre this summer. We've seen it a ton. Nico wasn't able to do that, just being on the West Coast. A lot harder, obviously, to make that trip from California to Tennessee. And he made that trip plenty of times. It just couldn't be there every weekend. Faison Brandon's type of player that should be able to do that with where he's from. And it's not for certain that he's going to commit to Tennessee, but it looks really good. And a big reason is because Tennessee was just in on that guy way before everyone else, and they never really zeroed in on any other guys. There's a 2026 guy in Nashville that ended up committing to Georgia. Tennessee didn't seem to be in on him really that much. They kind of put their focus on this guy, and I think that means a lot to these players. And that's been one of the secrets to success for Tennessee throughout this. They've done that with several players.
They definitely have, and hopefully it continues and the ball just keeps on rolling, because from the very beginning, I think it's been clear that if you could get that top level set of guys in here to play in Heupel's system, this could be so special. So special. But on that note, I did want to talk about this. Friend of the show, Josh Pate, obviously has his show that he does every. Sorry, I'm not advertising correctly for you, Josh. I don't know what all nights. I don't watch it every week, but it comes on. It is. Yeah. It's on constantly. YouTube.com. Go look up his clips. He's great. He's been on this show.
The Office. It's just flip on the TV. It'll be on.
It'll be there. Yeah, but he's been on this show, and he was talking about Tennessee and with this recruiting momentum, and he brought up some good points about NIL. It's just like minute 2 something, and I had to do this last week. My whole setup with playing stuff is kind of janky right now, so I'm just going to play it through my phone.
Very hot.
But yeah, this you can tell. Yeah, you can tell the huge budget that we have on this show by the technology we use. But here's what he had to say, and I thought it was just some good points.
Tennessee's the one to keep an eye on. Tennessee's the program to keep an eye on. If you want to know which program that's not currently at the head table of college football will probably be the next one, given their current trajectory, to join the head table of college football, it's Tennessee. Josh Heupel is very cerebral about how they recruit. It's not checkers, man. It's more chess to that guy. And he's very, very intentional about what they do. They're very intentional, and they're excellent at how early they identify kids and how ahead of the curve they are in evals. They're really good at that. And that just means that they get a head start on some other programs with kids they're going to end up competing with. Number 2, the NIL structure is top notch there. If you don't know any better, you think that just means they have a lot of money they can throw around. They do have a lot of money they can throw around. That is not NIL recruiting anymore. It was for about 5 minutes. For about 5 minutes, NIL was who can offer the most money. It was just very surface based. Okay, real recruiting in the NIL era is several layers deep. It is not just, I can get you this much money over this many years. There is an entire plan that has to be laid out. And secondly, if you're recruiting top end players, they're getting money from anywhere they go. So the money, ironically, is not what pushes most of these recruitments over the finish line. It's the plan. Okay, Texas is brilliant at this. Oregon's brilliant at this. There are a couple other programs that are recruiting halfway decently right now that I think have a ways to go in that. Tennessee, though, is one of the sneakiest, well put together NIL operations in college football right now.
So that's the bulk of it. I just thought you had some good points, some that we've already kind of said here on the show. I brought up, my friend told me that supposedly that this whatever happened with Brame, he's taking less money at Tennessee, and it goes to show that it's more than just the size of that check for a lot of these guys, and you have to know how to play that game. And I will say that I was skeptical at first with NIL at Tennessee. I wanted NIL at college football at large. I've always been huge. Just get these players paid. They deserve it. They've been shafted for all these years. I think that's great. But what I was skeptical of was just at the beginning, NIL across the board in all of college football, it was a lot of people that seemed like it was, they were just opportunistic, just trying to take advantage of the situation. Oh, I can pop in here. I can make my money. And, through this sort of guise of getting players paid. And you saw some real disaster situations like Florida and some different things that happened. And, I was just skeptical of like, okay, I think that this could end up being kind of amateurish. There's real potential for nonsense here with these NILs. But now Tennessee and the NIL volunteer club, Spire, all the stuff, they can work in sync. There's, as Pate said, there's synergy, and they really work well together. And it's become, I think, a really well-oiled machine. And maybe we're finally seeing the fruits of that. And it's really exciting because I think Tennessee has all the resources they need, they can compete with anybody in America right now. I mean, you got just as much money as anybody else, but it comes down to more than that, clearly. And I liked that point when it came to, this deal with Brame and some of the guys recently. It's more than just that. You can cut that check all day long, but Tennessee's figuring out the game a little bit and beating out Georgia for guys. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, I think that kind of just goes to show, really, from a even broader view, just how many things have to go right to recruit at a high level. I think for so long we talked about, the brand, and the brand is important. The Power T sells, the A at Alabama, the G at Georgia, Ohio State. Those brands sell. LSU, a lot of them, and that's obviously important. That's going to take you over the top. But you've got to have, obviously, you got to win. You've got to have this synergy. And it's not just the coaching staff. It starts with the coaching staff. It starts the administration. The whole entire athletic department has to kind of create that vibe. Whatever works. It doesn't have to be the same at every place. It's different at Georgia than it is at Tennessee. It's different at Alabama now than it was when Nick Saban was there. But everybody's got to be on the same page. And then the NIL has to be on the same page as well with all of that. And that's just, obviously at Florida, it was not. A lot of places it's not. Maybe Florida gets it right. They probably eventually will. There's too many resources down there to not eventually get it right. Tennessee just needs to take advantage of them while they're down. All this stuff has to work hand in hand, and only then can you really recruit at an elite level. It's not just as simple as hiring the right coach or throwing out the most money. There's just so much that has to go into it, and all that stuff's coming together for Tennessee, and it started coming together really the minute that Pruitt was fired and you hired Danny White. That started it all, and he got ahead of the curve on a lot of this NIL stuff to get a proper structure in place, and not, they were proactive instead of reactive with that stuff. All that stuff is combined to get you to the point that you are now. And from here, if you want to take that next step, if you're Tennessee, if you don't want this to just be a one-off, a repeat of the Butch Jones era where you recruit good for a couple of years and then the momentum just fizzles away, you got to go win. Like, you got to go win starting this year. You got to go win 10 games, I think, at minimum. You got to make the playoff. If you don't make the playoff and you've got – if Tennessee doesn't make the playoff, there's going to be probably 4 SEC teams ahead of them that do. It's going to be Georgia. It's going to be Texas, maybe Ole Miss, maybe Missouri with their schedule. It's a pretty light schedule this year, and they've got a lot coming back. Suddenly, that's a tough pitch when you're going to get a kid, and Eli Drinkwitz has made the playoff and you haven't, or Lane Kiffin has and you haven't. You've got to start winning games, and that's the only way you're going to get into that top 3, top 2, I think, recruiting classes on a consistent basis. You might end up top 3, top 4 this year if you get David Sanders and some other guys. But if you don't capitalize on this and really seize this momentum, and this is where it can take off. This is kind of that point where it's either going to take off and Tennessee's going to go be competing for national championships from years to come, or it's just going to kind of flatline. And, it feels like the momentum's going up. Like, I don't mean to be negative with that at all. I think it's going to take off. It feels like it's going to take off. It feels like everything that's happening is different than these times in the past when we thought we were excited. But it has to actually happen. Like, we have to see the results this time.
It does feel like they're truly poised for something. Kind of how you felt with baseball starting in 2020, where you kind of looked and you said, "Oh, this looks nice. This could really be something." Then they make the College World Series, and then they make the College World Series again, and then they win a national championship. And it's going to be a build to to Butch Jones's credit. What did he say? 7 years or something to build a program. It only took Josh 2 to win 10 games, but maybe it took how long was Vitello? Did it take him 7 years to win a national championship?
17. Well, 18 was his first year, so I guess it was his 7th season if you count the COVID year.
Hey, Butch knew his stuff.
Butch knew some things. I mean, we laugh at the whole brick by brick thing, right? But conceptually, like, that's correct. That's the only way you can build this program. Ironically, like,
crazily,
Butch Jones said that stuff, laid the plan out there, and then did the opposite. He tried to take shortcuts. He tried to expedite the process in a way that was not sustainable. Hype, on the other hand, has never said the word brick that I'm aware of, and that's exactly how he's done it. It's been these steps. Like, he hasn't tried to skip steps, take shortcuts, make false promises, all this stuff that we see. Now, and it's not just Butch. I know we pile on Butch, and we should, because he deserves it. But there's a lot of other coaches that have went down the same, had the same failures for the same reasons. Heupel he hasn't had to tell you that that's his process. He's just done it while expecting to win at the same time. You can do both. It's possible.
Exactly. And as far as recruiting, I mean, Top Troop says sort of what you were saying. Some of these boys just want to see a school win a national championship before they come, or big payday to come. Yeah, I mean, some guys you just have to. You got to win.
Yeah,
and you got to be
in
that
the game. Just be in the game. Be in the Final Four.
Yes, and that's why I think after that 22 season, it was so imperative to take advantage of recruiting, and maybe now they're doing that, and you can build that powerhouse going forward. But yeah, I mean, if you have another 10-win season this year, like that, you have to turn that, use hopefully the commitment of Faison Brandon and really get that 26 class rolling. And it's going to be all about momentum from here on out, and capitalizing on the opportunities that you're given. Cause I mean, it's make hay while the sun is shining on you, and across as we've already said today, the sun is truly shining on Tennessee right now. Maybe not in Knoxville in actual real life, right? Because it's been raining for days and days and days. But on Tennessee sports right now, it's just an unreal roll that everybody's been on. And this is the correct way for this to go. Hopefully it keeps going. But anything else with this before we move on to a little bit of fall ball, Zach?
No, I think from here, you're really watching David Sanders. He comes off those 2 big visits there, going to Nebraska and Tennessee this weekend. Does that mean Ohio State's out? Does that mean Georgia's out? It kind of seems that way. I mean, while Sanders has been so thorough with this recruitment, Austin Price this morning on 104.5 The Zone talked about how Sanders' parents have made him drive from Charlotte to Knoxville just to get the feel for that drive and what it would be like going back and forth, because there are times to go home and that's you're close enough, 3 hours, I think, to make that drive, and it's not terrible. Or does Nebraska become a serious player, late? It doesn't seem like he's the type that would have his recruitment trend that way. I mean, I don't know what Nebraska's deal is, but when something like that happens, when this program comes in super late and then swipes a recruit, like, what's your first thought usually? Like NIL? Like there's a late, huge NIL deal that's come through. Well, Sanders is not going to base his decision on NIL. Those opportunities will be there wherever he goes. Tennessee's going to, I'm sure, try to get him as much as they reasonably can, just like I think Ohio State would, just like I think Georgia would, and Nebraska too, I'm sure. But I don't think that's what his decision's going to be made on. It seems like he's the most familiar with Knoxville. He's made the most visits there. It feels good for Tennessee, but until he makes that commitment on, I think it's August 17th, it's just hard to know for sure because he's been so guarded with the information about his recruitment.
Yep, it's going to be an interesting finish there because, you did see it was like a few hundred people came out and greeted him at Nebraska or something, and then they tried to coordinate something at the Rock here in Knoxville when he showed up in Knoxville, and it wasn't that many people that ended up showing up. I didn't see the full, maybe 20, 30, something like that, which, to come see a recruit that's never played a snap for you, 20 to 30 is something that a lot of schools couldn't do. But especially in the middle of the summer when there's no students there, which is a whole other factor.
Yeah. Sanders has been to games at Tennessee. He knows the atmosphere. Nebraska fans are passionate and loyal. They've been through a lot too. Like, I don't want to, take a shot at their program by any means. Like, I feel their pain with what they've been through. It's a very similar arc to Tennessee at times, and I think it'll be tougher.
Even worse.
Yeah, and it'll be tougher for them just because of their location. It's just, again, it's nothing against Nebraska. It's just the way it is. Geographically, they're kind of landlocked there. Not kind of, they are, and it's just you're super far away from anything. It seems like it's just not the most ideal location. Whereas, I don't know, Southeast college towns, it's a little bit of a different feel, especially right now. So you never say never. It's just hard for me to see Sanders going there.
Distinguished gentleman says, football is back. Let's get it, boys. Respect. He's a Georgia fan, but respect always, as much as I dislike the dogs. But Caleb says, Sanders seems to have that Trey Smith maturity. I agree. He would be such a special kid to get. I think he would ultimately be a good leader on this team. Just from what I've seen, it's kind of that. It's not the exact same as Nico, but it's somewhat similar. Where you go, okay, it seems like he's got a pretty decent head on his shoulders. He's flip flopped around a decent amount in terms of who's the leader and all of these things. But that's going to happen.
At the same time, I think a lot of that's just speculation too. Like, he hasn't come out. He hasn't come out and really said much of anything except dropping his top 4. I mean, he's talked about how visits have gone. It's been the very standard line, like we were talking about at the beginning, of I enjoyed it, had a good time. Everybody does, right? Like, no recruit usually comes out of a visit. It's like, that's terrible, they're off the list, I'm not going back there. Like, you just don't hear that. I think a lot of it's just been this industry speculation, and there's just like there's some insiders that it's almost like they're trying to will something to happen, like for him to go to Ohio State or to Nebraska. So I wouldn't put too much stock into a lot of that. I don't know if he's ever had a leader, or if he has, I don't think he's probably told many people outside of his immediate family.
Well, the current feeling is it's Nebraska and Tennessee. Who knows what the real truth is there, and we'll find out soon enough, frankly. But now let's move to the actual football season, which is so close. We were right at a month. What's it? The 29th. Tennessee's first game is August 31st.
First practice on Wednesday, I think.
Yep. 2 days from now. So let's talk about that right after I tell you about Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee that's bringing sports betting to a whole new level. When you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to a $100 no-danger first wager. If your first bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet, up to $100. But there's even more good news. Zen Sports has a one-of-a-kind VIP rewards program, and if you qualify, you'll earn monthly comps at sporting events, concerts, you name it. There's even sportsbook bonuses. The VIP program is by invite only, so go to zensports.com/VIP to check it out and apply. What are you waiting for? Zen Sports offers true odds on all parlays, so get going and download the app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports, betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. No danger. First wager limited to plus 500 odds to qualify. Boosted odds are derived from equivalent parlay bets offered in Tennessee. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. All right. Fall camp right around the corner. 2 days from now. You got the media schedule today, Zach, and Heupel is set to talk on that first day. And as always, you expect in that first day, I noticed you sent us the media schedule, the open period, which would be when media can take video and actually see practice, is 2 periods out of 6. And the first period, I mean, most of it's like stretching. So you're not going to see a lot, at least in that maybe this first week. But that it is what it is what always happens every year. And then eventually you get to real practices and things really start to come together. But are you looking for anything in particular out of fall ball leading up to the season? Because we're so close. Is there anything you're looking out for, Zach?
Yeah, I think obviously stay healthy. That's the biggest thing of anything. And I think the running back battle, I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, who emerges. Do they give any hints? I'm really intrigued to see how the running backs are used in general this season. It's a different setup than Josh Heupel's had his first couple of years. And you've got Dylan Sampson, who's the clear number one. Last season, you pretty much knew it was going to be Jalen Wright. Then you knew Sampson was there, and you knew Jabari Small. He's not as electric as Sampson or Wright, but you knew what you were getting with him. He's a solid player, great in pass protection, picked up some chunk yardage when you needed him to. Really underrated player, good around the red zone. Now you just have a lot of uncertainty. And last year, you were splitting carries with these 3 players. You had that luxury to ride the hot hand and know that if something happened, you still had this other guy to go to. What happens now? What's the split up like of carries? Because Sampson's going to be your best running back from the get-go. He has the most experience. He's gotten better in pass protection. He has that elusive ability, and he can break off a 70-yard run like Jalen Wright could. Do you want to take him off the field that much for some unknowns and some younger players? Is Cam Seldon healthy? Do you trust a true freshman like Peyton Lewis? Is it Khalifa Keith that gets more run this season? I think there's just so much uncertainty there, and it's such an important position for Tennessee. At this point, it's no secret that they run the ball almost as much as they pass it, despite their reputation. So you've got to have some running backs that you trust, and you want them to be fresh when you get into the fourth quarter, when you get late into the season. So I'm really interested to see how much work Sampson gets early in the year. And then later into the year, if they try to conserve him a little bit, manage his reps, or if they're just like, no, we don't trust these other guys as much. We got to have him out there, even though it's a bit of a risk because of the wear and tear. I think that's one of the biggest things I'll be kind of watching during camp to see. I don't expect Heupel to give any hints really, but does Darrell Sims, the new running backs coach, talk about the rotation? Does the offensive coordinator Joey Hosley talk about it? Just see if we can get a feel for that is one thing to watch.
Absolutely. It is really important just as a position that has seen so much rotation just in Heupel's first few years. I mean, he just had a really nice duo, sometimes trio at certain points where he could rotate guys out, and he's just not going to have that. That will be interesting to watch. Caleb says the offensive guard competition. It struggled in the orange and white game. 100% agree there. The offensive line in general, just because, again, it's another just so important position in this offense. It's all important with the offense because it all works in conjunction. But all of the sort of battles on that offense, kind of where the wide receivers fall, because you don't exactly know who your set starters are going to be. I think there's pretty good speculation, but you got enough, transfers, new guys, and it's pretty deep room, and there's a lot to watch on that offense.
Yeah, I think the offensive line, obviously the left guard position is going to be huge. That's your one unsettled position going into the season. Is it Lampley, Carriage? I mean, you got some Bison Lane, you got some options there. But beyond that, I mean, even though you got these other positions settled, what's the depth? Who steps up is the depth. You've got to have a backup center. Even if Cooper Mays plays every snap this season or every meaningful snap, you've still got to develop a center for next season because you really don't want to go into the portal and get one because this offense, ideally, you develop your center this season and into next spring, and they're ready to go, by next fall. If you got to get a transfer, it's just, so you got to learn this offense. You're the guy out there making calls. We've seen how important Cooper Mays is. That's going to be a huge thing to replace after this season. Does someone step up there? Your tackle depth? Does one of these young guys step up? Does Bennett Warren come in and instantly he's a guy that can come in and play meaningful snaps for you at tackle? You got to build that depth. So I think even though the offensive line is mostly settled outside of that left guard position, I think there's a lot of intrigue there with the players behind. You really got to see some guys step up and develop. You haven't really seen a tackle, developed yet that Tennessee took out of high school. You inherited Darnell Wright. You got Gerald Mincey from Florida. You have John Campbell from Miami, Lance Hurd now from LSU. Can you have some guys step up and play that position that you signed out of high school? I'm definitely watching that. And then with the wide receivers, I think you got Swirl and Brew pretty much penciled in as veterans. They know this offense. They're going to be out there a lot. And then it's how do you get Dante Thornton and Chris Brazzell on the field? How do you get Mike Matthews and Braylon Staley as true freshmen out there? Because they're super talented players that should be able to contribute for you pretty early if they can, get this offense down. And they've been around, since spring and before at this point. It'll definitely be interesting to see how that wide receiver rotation shakes out. But, you got to get through fall camp. One injury could throw all your plans out the window there. So that's why I don't think that, we want to know the depth chart. We want to know the rotation. I think Josh Heupel and Kelsey Pope and Joey Hasley, I think they go into this fall camp like, let's just see how it shakes out and what works best for us, and we'll go with that.
Who even would be the backup center? Bison Lang?
I think so. Dane Davis has played some snaps.
Maybe.
There.
They do like to go with the senior guys.
13 years or so now.
Yeah, he's in his 43rd year at Tennessee.
Which, I know that guy's probably not going to be an NFL player, but he's provided versatility and he's stepped up and played some important snaps for this team when needed, when other guys just couldn't figure it out.
Hey, and a guy like that is super valuable. But as far as defense goes, the defensive backs, I think a lot of people are looking to see, is it just all senior guys, the oldest guys that they have? Because that's been the tendency. That's Heupel in general. Always seems to go with older guys. He likes more senior dudes. But do they switch it up? Does Boo Carter get run?
He should.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of people thinking that. And do they set aside that tendency to go to older guys for the most talented guys and the guys that could really be special? There's plenty there. And I don't think, you could say, oh, we want to see James Pierce, of course, but are you really going to see if he's added true explosiveness and real anything additional to his game during a fall camp session, and especially the amount of fall camp session that you can see as media? Probably not, admittedly. But it's going to be great just to see him again.
We'll get a good hype video from Tennessee about August 8th of Pierce blowing by Lance Hurd, and it'll be a freak out. Is Lance Hurd overrated? Is he okay? And then it'll be excitement over James Pierce. That's kind of how that usually goes.
Yeah, we'll just have to see. But as far as that goes, first day is Wednesday. We're gonna get, I think, what Heupel.
Lots of people talk tomorrow at their kind of media day, coaches, players, Heupel, and then Heupel has to talk again Wednesday after practice, making him do double duty. That will be, if you keep up with Tennessee's media sessions during the season, he always talks on, I think, Monday and Thursday, and usually that Thursday media session is about 6 minutes long, and he tells you that they'll see where everybody is on like Friday night injury-wise when he's not going to speak to the media any longer. Or any more after that, so we know nothing, and that's pretty much it. It's almost pointless.
Yeah,
or it is pointless.
We'll see later in the week. We're gonna hear a lot of that. We'll see later in the week.
Yeah, we'll see where we're at on the back end of this week. That's his That's the way he phrases it. The back end of the week.
Yep.
Okay, you mean Saturday, like at kickoff?
I am interested to see. I don't remember in years past with media day, even with Butch, I was always kind of impressed that Butch let this happen. But his media days would be you got to go into the locker room and each dude would sit in their locker and you could just go up and interview whoever you wanted to, essentially. I don't know exactly how it goes now because I don't do day-to-day media anymore.
They're just at the podium, I think, and in these little like scrums, and it's there's like a selection of players. It's already, I think the list is already out there.
It's gonna be Amari Thomas and
Keenan Peely,
just
Cooper Mays,
the oldest guys that are gonna say the least amount of stuff,
and the Australian punter, that guy.
Yes, of course. No, it's gonna be fun, and we can't wait. We're gonna watch it all. There was a little news this week about how they're gonna build a hotel on top of G10. That was kind of interesting. It's way, way off in the future.
It sounds like an AI country song that somebody asked to be written about Neyland Stadium.
Well, it was interesting. I posted, as I said earlier in the show, this weekend, rode by Neyland in a boat this weekend, and took a picture and posted that. And I just, I tweeted, I said soon, with a picture of Neyland. And somebody in the comments made a good point. They said with the new hotel, that view that you have is gone. It'll be a hotel now. It won't be that nice sort of curb appeal view of Neyland. You'll still have it from different angles. Yeah, I was like, that's gonna change the look of that entire facade in a very real way. It'll make G10, the actual garage, it'll make it look better from those renderings because G10 is just a big concrete block with nothing particularly remarkable about it.
Yeah,
but that hotel, I mean, it's gonna be right up in front of the stadium if it actually all happens. But I would be excited. I think we had a show like last year sometime when I talked about my concerns. I used to live in downtown Knoxville. Like, I care a lot about that development, how it all goes. I'm skeptical just because it's away from downtown. You're not in the middle of downtown. You wouldn't be able to walk there from a hotel in downtown Knoxville.
It is the destination if you go there out of season or away from game day. That is a reasonable concern because a lot of stuff like that can struggle when you don't have. I mean, it just has to be a destination. There has to be enough stuff there that people want to come there and spend time, and not just kind of a one-off deal.
Yeah, I mean, they made a big shopping center right down near campus. It was a Publix and a Walmart and restaurants and PetSafe and all this stuff, and a ton of it's gone out of business because people just like don't go down there. That just is not a common place to go. A lot of people live in West Knoxville and stay in West Knoxville unless you live in downtown. But hey, we'll see if that actually happens. But anything else, Zach, before we bounce out of here?
Yeah, I think that about covers it. I mean, this is it gets real after tonight. There's a lot to talk about from here until, well, really about this time next year, I guess, if the baseball team carries on. We'll go straight into basketball and the baseball and hopefully deep into June with the baseballs.
Lord willing, from this podcast to God's ears. Let's do it. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan, thank you so much for watching, for everybody who tuned in, even Lou, man, the Vandy fan who for some reason watches our show. I see him in the comments here. Top Troop, Caleb, Shaggy, everybody. A distinguished gentleman who's a Georgia fan. Again, why you watch us, I don't know. But hey, we're glad that you do. We couldn't do it without you. It means the world. And that's it for this week. We will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.